Today, I'm going to be talking about who pays on the first couple of dates. Dun, dun, dun. This is quite a controversial subject, even in 2020. Despite us being very woke, breaking down the male patriarchy, it still exists where we have these rules that still circulate around dating who pays, i.e., for the most part, I know that if I'm going on a date with someone, I intend to pay. That's just kind of how it is. In fact, it's so neurologically and cerebrally programmed in my head that I don't even give it a second thought, quite frankly. This 2020. Gender equality still has a long way to go, in my opinion. There's still a couple of things that we need to figure out, but for the most part, it's getting better. And men are working together more. I've had more female bosses than I've ever had male bosses, quite frankly. And, we got some great stuff happening. We've had more women in Congress than ever before. We have Native American, we have Islamic women in Congress. We have Black women in Congress. You name it, we have it. Equality is growing in a great way. And finally, we're kind of getting into a situation where everybody feels like they have a seat at the table, or there's a strong chance that they will in the near future. I was looking at Cinemark the other day, and I was looking at movies, and there were an abundance of female protagonists. So things are going well. Boom, we're moving. But here's one thing that hasn't changed in the last decade or couple of decades or so are who pays for the first couple of dates. It's always assumed to be men. And it's interesting because I've even dated the strongest feminists who hate the patriarchy, but I still ended up paying for majority of the dates. So let's get into that, because this isn't a video hating on anyone's sex, saying that men are victims and oh, we have to pay for so many dates, our bank accounts are dying. No, I'm not talking about that. It's not that deep. But I'm trying to paint a picture for how we should perhaps start seeing things a bit differently now, especially because we are getting into a situation where things are coming to more of an equal head. Before 1974, women couldn't even get credit cards. Their husband or a man in their life had to sign. That is how far we've come. But let's talk a bit more about it. We've spoken about equality being better, but why does a man have to pay for the first couple of dates? Why is that still something that kind of exists? And there are a few reasons that I've heard with the women that I've spoken to in my life, focus groups that I've had when I was writing my book, and general consensus from some other people that I know in my life as well. The main reason I've heard is why men still shoulder the bulk of paying is, one, women expect them to be a gentleman. So it's like a gentleman will pay for the first couple of dates. I can get down with that. I think that's kind of a gentlemanly thing to do. Number two, women like to embrace their femininity. So as a man, when you take a woman out and you plan and prepare for the first couple of dates, it allows for them, to get dressed up, to embrace their femininity, to feel like someone's, making an effort, and to be honest, be romanced a bit, okay? Romance should not be dead. We're trying to bring it back, okay? 2020, romance, let's go. And the third one is, with so many people having options these days, sometimes a woman would like a man to, show himself differently from the rest of the bunch, rather than being a cliche and saying, come over to my house and do Netflix and chill. Get me a coffee. Maybe we go out and get some ice cream. Maybe we get some drink. Especially if she's an attractive woman worth her salt, she's definitely going to want you to step it up just a little bit. So those are, I would say, the top three reasons that have kind of been given to me, and I could be wrong. But I decided to do some research, because I know people could say, well, that's easy for you to say, you're a man, you probably hate paying, you damn cheapskate, right? But I am talking about it, damn it, and I want to share the information with you. I did some nerd stuff. I got my laptop here, and I wanted to show you guys some of the things that I found on the internet in regards to facts, things that you probably already knew. But let me read through some right now. So, on a recent survey by Credit Donkey, they said that only 6.5% of female participants felt like they should pay for dates. 6.5%. In a recent article by OkCupid, online dating, they ran a survey with 44,000 members, and the women cited that they would split the bill 35% of the time. Not bad, not bad. In fact, the question of who should pay for the date is the most skipped question on the actual site itself. this is a controversial subject indeed. People are getting triggered left and right. They do not want to talk about who pays. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But hey, we're here now, so let's get into it. In a money.com survey, they found 78% still think that men should pay for the dates. This was taken from 4,447 participants. Plus about the rest in that survey. They said that 20% disagreed and thought it should be equal. The other 2% declined to answer. Apparently, this is a far more touchy subject than I realized, but this is fun. In a survey by NBCnews.com, it reported that most men, 84%, and women, 58%, attested that men still pay for more dates. Some women, 39% of them, went as far to say they wish men would reject their offers to pay. Nearly 2/3 of men, 64%, believe that men should contribute, and nearly half of men, 44%, said they would stop dating a woman who never pays. So these are some very interesting statistics that we're dealing with right now. We're seeing that even now there are still such huge discrepancies in regards to who should pay. In a survey from NerdWallet between men and women, they mentioned that only 20% want to actually split the bill, and a measly 4% protesting that men shouldn't pay. So some women could turn around and say, Trey, it's the early stages of dating. For the most part, I'll pay. Okay, let's see what facts have to say about this. In a LearnVest survey, it attested that men and women, even more so, women think that men should pay for a majority of dating. This survey was conducted amongst 17,000 heterosexual women and men from 18 to 55. The survey even mentioned that men should still pay for a majority of dates even after a long dating period. 2/5 of women with six-figure incomes explained that they were frustrated if men expected them to pay. Because if someone's making six figures and they still want someone to pay, it goes deeper than any kind of monetary value. But let's continue. Now, here's the thing about it. There are even unwritten rules in regards to who pays. For example, if you're on a first date and the woman offers to pay, this is a subconscious test, okay? If you let her pay, it could go two ways, because not all women are like this. It could go two ways. Number one, she could just have wanted to pay because she's a great woman and maybe she's more comfortable with that. Number two, it could be a question of, you know, she doesn't really like you, quite frankly. She wants you to get the hell out of here, and she's not trying to be beholden to you in any way, so she's gonna pay. And number three, last but not least, the most important one, is she doesn't want you to accept. And the moment you don't accept, she might have some unwritten rule where she feels like, okay, this is the guy I'm gonna invest my time on. So it really is kind of tricky the more you think about it, but I don't think there's any part of dating that is, you know, unless you date someone who pretty much thinks the same way as you and she's got her shit together, or you probably end up marrying her, quite frankly. So let's talk a bit more about the why. So why are dating standards still kind of stuck in the 1940s and 50s? When you think about it, oftentimes I'll hear, you know, my parents or someone else's parents talk about how they used to date, and I'd be like, yo, you know, there's not much difference apart from we ain't calling. People are texting, people are Snapchatting, you know, people are doing all of these things. There really isn't that much difference in regards to that. So why are we still pandering to these old school gender roles? Well, number one, people like it. People generally like the way those gender roles are when it comes to dating, because quite frankly, that's how some people are naturally wired. You know, that's how it's always been for a long time for a reason. In the 50s and 60s, they really didn't pay women well. If you've seen Mad Men, you know, an abundance of them were typewriters and secretaries and blah, 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 blah. Like, they really didn't pay women well. Women were not in roles of power. Yes, I know we're still in a situation where we're trying to get women in higher roles of power, but for the most part back then, that just wasn't a reality of a woman's day-to-day life. So back in the day, when a man would pay, of course he'd pay, because a woman wouldn't even make nearly as close to what a man would make in the 50s and 60s. Now bear in mind, the 50s and 60s, hey buddy, are you trying to get in this? You trying to get in this? Oh, he wants his screen time. Here, come up here. Come up here, don't hit your head, don't hit your head. Good boy, good boy, there he is. Hello, this is Edmund. He wanted to show himself again. Who's that? Can you see what I'm looking at? Can you see it? Okay. He'll probably end up leaving when he realizes he's bored. In the 50s and 60s, like I was mentioning before, women barely made even close to what men made. So it was expected, and of course men should pay then. However, we're living now. And I can tell you that I've probably dated at least, 8+ women who have made more than me in my whole tenure in this dating and relationship world, if you want to call it that. I remember once I went on a date with a lady and she said to me, if a man's expecting to get any sex, he better pay for those dates. And I sat there and I was like, yo. And she was laughing as well. And I'm like, oh man, like, okay, I guess this is kind of how it is, huh? But this is kind of the expectations for a lot of guys these days. Some men, there's three type of guys out there, right? There's a guy that pays for a date because he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. I want to get to know you. Let me take you out somewhere, right? The second guy's like, okay, well, I'm the man. I guess I'll pay for the date. Where do you want to go, right? And there's the third guy who's like, yeah, I'm paying for this date. I'm definitely paying for this thing, boy. I'm trying to get me some. I'm trying to get some sex. That's the third guy. And unfortunately, I can't help but feel like a couple of these first dates are guy number 3. A couple of those are guy number 1. I don't think there's a lot of guy number 2. However, that guy is out there and he's miserable. So when a man thinks to himself, paying for date equals sex, it makes paying for dates even more convoluted. So we're starting to see the intricacies of how, a man shouldering the bulk of the weight with dates just isn't really working these days. So how can we change the playing field ultimately? I'm going to tell you men right now, that probably isn't going to change anytime soon, at least not in our lifetime. I'm going to keep it real, for real. Whenever I'm dating someone, I plan for the first couple of days just to be on me. And anything after that she decides she wants to, kind of help out with or treat me is a bonus, quite frankly, because the initial courting stages of getting to know someone, that's just how it is. And maybe I'm doing it wrong. If you guys are going out there and you're not spending a dime, I'm interested to see how that kind of works out with you. But for the most part, that's not really going to change. But this is more geared towards the women, because when you're a man and you're paying for these dates sequentially, it's sometimes a bit confusing. You're not really sure how much skin she has in the game. When you're planning, preparing, and paying for these dates and she hasn't done so yet, no matter how many times she shows up, no matter if you've kissed, hell, no matter even if you've had sex, you still don't really know. Because in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, well, of course she's still going out with me. Like, I'm taking her to these fancy places. We're having a good time. I'm pretty much putting everything on the table. She knows exactly how I feel because I'm putting forth that effort. But as a man, you don't really know. Because you know, but you don't know, if that makes sense. So when a woman decides to say, hey, you know what? Let me pay for this date. Let me take you out. Or let's go halves. Let me split the bill. That is a huge sign and a huge indicator of interest for any man out there. Because it's at that point that they know, oh my goodness, I think she actually likes me. But before any of that happens, a man just considers himself as mutual. What? Still love him though. Still love this guy. A man just considers himself as mutual. So there are a few things that I'd direct this to women more so than men. The first thing I would request you do is, if you go on a date and you don't like the guy, split the bill, okay? You've all heard of that guy who took a girl out, she said she wasn't interested, and then he immediately, hey, Venmo'd her. The guy Venmo'd her. Like, what a dickhead. I couldn't believe that when I heard that. An amazing story. You don't want to have that. You want to just cut your losses, split the bill, and just be done with it. You don't even have to tell him you're not interested. Just split the bill, okay? If you are interested and you do decide you want to split the bill, be very vocal with how you feel. Say, I know I'm splitting the bill, but I am interested. Yes, put yourself out there. It's a dated notion, but it works. I would also say, expect to pay. Don't assume that every man you go out with is going to be paying. Don't ever do that, because you might end up with egg on your face. So when you go to any date, bring your wallet and expect to pay just in case, because unfortunately, not every man was raised that way. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but not every man was raised to pay for the date. So expect to pay when you go on a date. Number 3, I would say don't expect someone to pay for you. It's kind of similar to when I said, expect to pay. But there really is a difference between two kinds of women when you go on a date. So if I go on a date, I'm always expecting to pay, right? And when the check comes and I pull out my card, if she says, no, I can get it too, I'm always gonna politely decline because I had planned to pay anyway. But when a woman offers, I'm like, oh, wow, that's so attractive. Even if she doesn't really have any intention on paying, it's still nice that she's considerate enough to kind of show that, hey, if I really had to, I probably would have paid. I just think that's attractive to me personally, and that's a show of good faith. Versus when the check comes and you pay it and the woman just sits there like, I'm just like, all right, well, I'm not gonna see you again. Jesus, you couldn't even do the fake reach. Do you know what I'm saying? So, don't expect someone to pay for you, kind of going there with the mentality that you will pay, so that when the guy does pay, which you kind of know is gonna happen anyway, it's far more of a pleasant surprise. And I would say, offer again, right? So let's say if a guy pays for the first and second date, you offer twice and he says no. The third date happens, you offer to pay and you pay for that guy, or you offer to pay and you let him know, hey, you know what? I like you. Like, you've paid for the first couple of days. I would love to pay for this. And if he says no, say, I promise I want to get something next time. Because when you say that, it's again a show of faith where he knows, oh wow, like she's actually interested. There's gonna be a next time. So offer to pay as well. So what's the conclusion then? Ultimately, where does this leave us and dating in 2020? Most people who generally want a sincere, monogamous and trustworthy relationship, eventually they come to a point where they don't even have to talk about it, where they'll go out and the man will get the movie tickets and the woman will get the popcorn or concessions, right? Like, I feel like all of those things eventually work out with, I believe, the people who are meant to be in a relationship. What ultimately it comes down to, at least to me, I have clairvoyance enough to understand what's expected, from me as a man. Regardless of how progressive anyone says they are, I pretty much know what I have to bring to the table if I want to make any relationship kind of make it through. As a man, or as men, and I don't speak for every man, but most of the men I know, we just need to know that we have a contributor in the dating scenario or in a relationship. And what I mean by a contributor is, if I get the bulk of something, I want you to, contribute so I know that you appreciate what I'm doing. Perhaps if I get a $150, dinner check, you say, hey, let me get the tip. And perhaps if we go to lunch and then we go bowling and then dinner time comes, you're like, hey, you say, let me get dinner. Like, stuff like that. Guys, ultimately, we don't want someone who's gonna pay away. We don't want someone who always insists on going Dutch, but we want someone who's going to be a contributor to, exactly what it is we're bringing onto the table. And if they want to be more than a contributor, so be it. But ultimately, that's kind of what it comes down to for most men. Some people out there who are kind of bitter and refuse the notion of paying for a date. And they say, I'll never pay for a date. The man should pay for all of the dates. What kind of nonsense is this? He should be the provider. Honestly, those are the kind of bitter people that you see on Instagram, complaining, moaning. Those are those bitter articles you see on those websites by these, acclaimed self-help gurus, right? Who every single time they're in a relationship and they get broken up with, they don't even know why. But ultimately that was a large portion of it because they were not contributors of a relationship. Those people are out there as well. Those people who are in solid relationships, exactly how the relationship works. It doesn't work by one person shouldering all of the responsibilities. True relationships are always built on the foundation of reciprocity, respect, and fun. I would suggest that you generally consider looking outside your comfort zone and perhaps doing things that you haven't done before. I wrote an article about this that I'm going to post on the firstdatesfix.com. I have articles that I do every week. In addition to that, I post a couple of memey things, some quotes about love and some brief facts and stuff, just to kind of pump you guys up if you're looking for a relationship and, make you guys even happier if you are already lucky enough to be in a relationship. Thank you so much for sitting through this one. It was long. Well, I would generally love to hear what all of you at home think about it. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.